So the government, which is in power in Israel for the last 6 months, has a very clear ideologic character. It's religious, messianic, ultra right wing, very anti-Arab, very anti-Palestinians. The people who are the strongest ministers in the cabinet believe that Israel should evict the Arabs from the territory, and that between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean, only one national collective should exist. That's what they believe, and that's what they are doing. Now, why they started this judicial overhaul, the legislation and what they call the reform, because this is a tool which they need for several purposes. The first one is to implement their policy vis-a-vis the Palestinians. Till now, the Supreme Court was a barrier against very arbitrary, very brutal actions against the Palestinians. The Supreme Court stood and blocked it. They want to remove the barrier, one thing, for annexation, for confiscating lands, to build settlements on private Palestinian land. For all this, they need that will be no independent Supreme Court, one thing. The second, for the ultra-religious parties, this is an opportunity to legislate into law all their fantastic dreams, like that those who are studied in religious schools will be exempted of military service. So the Israeli young generation will be divided to those who are fighting and those who are sitting and studying Torah. This is their aspiration, and they are very, very close to achieve it. Another interest is of the Likud party itself, in order to cement their hold over the electorate and to have at least a captive group of voters for the next decade, is to give jobs. Where? Municipalities and governmental companies. To do so, they need that will be no Supreme Court that will give a verdict. No, this nomination has no reasonability. It's against any sense. Cancel it. So they want to remove it. These are the joining interests of the parties in the coalition to be free to act against the Palestinians, to annex totally the West Bank, to legislate very ultra-religious laws, and to have a monopoly on jobs in the public sector, in the government, in governmental companies, and so forth. This is what drives them. The majority of the population is against it. They believe in the values of the founders of Israel as a democratic state, and they can't accept it. They can't see that their beloved state becomes a dictatorship, that the government loots the public treasury. Everything that's going on, that this is against their most profound convictions and beliefs. So they took to the streets. The silent, what Netanyahu succeeded to do is to take the silent majority and to turn it to an active majority, a majority which takes to the street and protests for 32 weeks without one single Saturday stop, every Saturday night. thousands and hundreds of thousands of Israelis are taken to the streets and very furiously, though not violently, they protest. It will lead, I believe, during September, October, to what we call the judicial crisis, constitutional crisis. Why? Because the Supreme Court has to make several decisions. If the government does not accept the decisions of the Supreme Court, it will bring a crisis. Why a crisis? Because senior public servants will have the choice. To whom do they obey? To the government or to the Supreme Court? Since they are going to obey the Supreme Court and not this government, it will lead to a crisis. I hope that this crisis will not turn to a violent crisis. But I hope it will bring about new elections. New elections is new government. New government will be, according to all the polls, totally different to the one that we have now. It will be in favor of democracy, in favor of rule of law, and I believe, since I know what is the composition of the parties in a future coalition, it will be a coalition that will seek solution to the conflict with the Palestinians, not the other way around. So here is our hope. The protest will not subside. It will continue and it will become more and more furious. It will lead to crisis. The crisis will lead to regime change. This is our belief and our hope. If the senior civil servants will say that they do not obey the government but obey the Supreme Court, you can't run the country. This is a crisis. Those who think that the ongoing protest, 32 weeks without stopping, it means that the Israeli society is weak, it's a grave mistake. On the contrary, it shows how strong is the Israeli democracy. That the people do not allow to violate the democracy, and they are ready to go every week to the streets. Those hundreds of thousands, I believe, half a million every week that are in the streets, they are doing it out of love of Israel, love of their country, adherence to the values of the founding fathers of Israel. And if, I hope it will not happen, but if Israel is attacked by miscalculation of the Iranians, all of them will go to the front. All of them will fight. All of them will fend off any aggression against the country. That will be the result. So those who think that the Israeli society is weak, on the contrary, the demonstration are demonstration of hatred to dictatorship, but love to the Israeli democracy. They should understand it. Otherwise, they will make a grave mistake. Let's start with the international business community, with the banks, with the financial institutions. They don't trust a state which is run by this kind of dictatorship, where the Supreme Court has no force. They don't want to do business with that. A lot of capital is going out of the country. So if you ask about the relationship, first the relationship with the international financial community, very bad. Loss of trust. Then in the political, diplomatic way, the governments in Europe, except very certain governments, which you know who I mean, they don't like to work with this kind of government. Let's say not illiberal, non-democratic government. They don't want it. They don't want to cooperate with such a government. Some of the ministers are blunt racists. The Minister of Finance, the one who has to hold all the financial and business connections and economic connections with the world. He is the prophet of racism. He now in these very days, as a Minister of Finance, he holds the budget for the Arab towns in Israel and don't give money that was allocated to school, for education, for culture. Say, I don't want the in his circles, he says, you know who I am. I don't give money to Arabs. He said, you are temporary residents, temporary citizens of this in this state. For the time being, you are citizens. So for the time being, citizens doesn't want to give money. This is another face of Israel, and let alone Arab countries in the region are not enthusiastic to cooperate with such a regime. No. So there is no chance that the Abraham Accord, which was such a good, important, historic development, will thrive, will be developed. Not with this government. Not with this government. Netanyahu chose those partners and appointed them to their position. He is responsible. He is the prime minister. He is the leader. It is his responsibility. Look, Netanyahu is a very clever and intelligent man. He knows exactly the ramification, the implications of what this government is doing. But he needs these coalition partners to hold him in power. He wants to he hang on in power because he wants to cancel his own judicial process. He is under very serious accusations. He has to stand in the court. The process of the judicial process of himself is going on. He wants to stop it. That's why he needs the coalition partner. He is dependent on them because he hopes that they will vote for such a legislation that will exempt him of being in court and maybe in jail. The Americans cannot dictate to the Israeli government what to do. They say very clear, beyond the boundaries of diplomatic courtesy, what they think about this judicial reform. Very clear. And what they say about the hardliners who govern the country, the country. But they cannot replace the decision of the Israeli people. The meaning should be very clear. Now, Netanyahu maybe gambles on Trump's victory. Just to remind you, even if he is right, we are speaking on January 25. Will not hold till January 25. Will not. The redemption, if there is, may be too late for him. I believe that the crisis will come in October. In October, our parliament, the Knesset, is back in session. They will try, I believe, to pass some legislation which terribly annoy the people, and it will aggravate the crisis. Now, if, as there are some signs in the last days, that Netanyahu is hesitating to legislate, for instance, the exemptions of religious boys from serving in the military, the fury in the streets, if he legislated, the fury in the streets will get higher. If he avoids to do it, his partners will give him a very hard time, even by dismantling the coalition. But for them, it's a very important issue. Just to give you an idea, what the ultra-religious parties succeed to lose the government. The value in money of the support to the religious educational system is the same amount that the United States give us every year as military support. We have to make a very, very clear and accurate description. Many reserve officers in the more sophisticated and important units of our military feel that they cannot serve under dictatorship. They do not refuse to serve, but those who serve in reserve on basis of volunteering, they suspend their volunteering. That's the difference. They don't say, if they got an order, they obey. If somebody is called to service, he will come. But all those, and there are many of them, and very important people in the military, in the military, when they used to come to service as volunteers for years, people in the age of 50 and 60 and more than 60, their experience and their knowledge is very crucial. They say, up to here, do not volunteer anymore. It's difficult for them emotionally. It's difficult for me emotionally to support it, but this is their moral decision. They say, the government broke the contract with me. I came to do everything and to risk my life for a democracy, not for dictatorship of Netanyahu and his partners. These people are not against the service. Those people used to serve beyond the official threshold of age. They are not obliged to serve anymore, but they do it as volunteers. They love the service. Those who are in service, I don't think that they will do anything to violate their commitment. No, they will not do it. I know that they will not do it. But the people who are in reserve, who are not in the service, but only as volunteers, they are free to decide. And these are the best sons of the nation. You have to know it. How you know? Because they are most of them ready every week, ready to sacrifice themselves in risky missions far away from the borders of Israel. They are doing it as a sense of commitment to the state of Israel. They believe that the policy of Netanyahu and the values that this government represents are a danger to Israel, and they say so. And they are contradictory to the basic values on which Israel is founded. Look, we have Declaration of Independence from May 48, from the day that the state of Israel was declared. And this declaration was offered in the days of the most cruel and fierce war with the Arabs. And the declaration says, our hand is outstretched for peace. We want a state with equal rights to Jews and Arabs. This is not the behavior of the Minister of Finance who is holding budget for Arab municipalities. It's not the same. It's a contradiction to our Declaration of Independence. And by the way, one of the slogans that you see in the demonstration is, we are loyal to the Declaration of Independence.